Who is a character in both the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible that straddles the line between Christian figure and Jewish figure? I believe that would be the prophet Elijah from the book of Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings. But who is this figure that the New Testament writers were a little bit into when they were describing John the Baptist, how people saw John the Baptist, how people saw Jesus? Elijah was, well, still is, revered by Catholics, all Christians, and Jews, but he isn't very prominent in Christianity because a lot of his attributes go against the idea that these miracles and these specific types of miracles and phenomena were unique to figures like Jesus. Let's look into it. We're at the Friends and Heroes site just to make our boy Elijah here a little bit easier to describe. He was a prophet with a rugged look and a blunt way of speaking. He was never afraid to tell even kings and queens when he felt they were behaving badly. Oh, shame on you, saith Elijah. Thus saith the Lord through Elijah. Sometimes this got him into trouble, but he always wanted to tell the truth. Don't we all? One of the best known stories about Elijah happened when he challenged 450 false prophets to set fire to a bonfire without any matches. They couldn't do it, but God answered Elijah's prayer and his sacrifices. The bonfire, with special meaning, I guess, at least interpreted this way, burst into flame. The evil king at the time, Ahab, and his queen Jezebel were angry because their false god had been defeated by Elijah, or God through Elijah, supposedly. And that is in 1 Kings chapter 18. So 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 21 says, Then Elijah stood in front of them, the prophets, and said, quote, How much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. From the New Living Translation. So, he was living in a time when his supreme God wasn't very popular. And in the land of ancient Israel, he was a bit of an outcast because, well, everyone else is supporting all these other deities that have been cross-pollinated from neighboring tribes, kingdoms, and societies. And Elijah's kind of bitter about that because the Lord of his people has been sidelined, and if we know anything from Scripture, we know that the God of Israel is a jealous God. In fact, the God of Israel acknowledges other gods, but preaches to us that they are indeed false, and he is the only true one. So we get Elijah. He's not fun at parties. I mean, I take that back. He is fun at parties because he can do things through the help of his God. Now, this was likely written a long time after Elijah's life. It simply had to have been, and a lot of the story was paralleled through other cultures at the time, simply because the end of his life mirrors a lot of, well, one motif in particular that is popular in ancient Greek mythology. I'm sorry if that makes any biblical literalist a bit mad, but that's true. The vessel in which he was brought to heaven was not unique to Judaism, put it that way. So, the guy got discouraged, like anyone. And in fact, he was so unpopular that he ran away from being a prophet. The fact that he was just sort of not invited to most parties at the time, and everyone was just shrugging him off was just making him mad. In fact, people were a bit mad at him because he could do some things when others couldn't. Some pretty impressive things. And, otherwise he would sort of, well, I don't want to say gloat, because I don't think that gloating is in the ancient Israelite character, but it might be in Elijah's character a little bit. But the Lord, his God, told him, "Oh, you still have 7,000 friends, and you don't know about them, and they're still faithful to me, your God." I guess that must have, lit that spark back in him, because not just he played a part in their lives, not just kings, queens, but other prophets, false prophets. He made them all look like idiots. And one time, he helped a single mom feed her child, and after praying for the boy, he brought the boy back to life when he had tragically died. So, you might be able to say, Elijah knew how to resurrect a body. That's not to say that, according to the book, he literally resurrected the body, although in his time people might have believed he did, and they might have continued to believe for centuries and centuries. But the way it's written, it says that Elijah prayed to his Lord, and his Lord brought this child back to life. So there isn't anything boring about Elijah, The way he died, indeed, is spectacular. God sent a chariot of fire, pulled by horses of fire. Elijah disappeared in a blaze of flame and wind. An exciting life brought to an end in an exciting way. So, sources: 1 Kings, chapter 17 to 2 Kings, chapter 2. Okay, yeah. So, I was right. Elijah is in 1st and 2nd Kings, of course. Let's look at Elijah's character a little bit deeper. So, Elijah, meaning of the name Yahweh, is God, because El is another ancient Hebrew term for God. He was born as a Tishbite of Gilead, the specific house in the specific tribe. He was a Benjaminite, son of Jeroham, described in 1 Chronicles chapter 8, verse 27. The tribe of Benjamin produced several heroes and mighty warriors. And when Elijah lived during the 9th century BC. The northern kingdom of Israel had already split off from Judah for a long time. It had become apostate. The people primarily worshipped Baal, particularly because of the influence of Queen Jezebel, who was married to King Ahab. And Jezebel was a Phoenician, an ancient Lebanese, what is now Lebanon. So therefore, Elijah, whose name means Yahweh is God, or my Lord, or the Lord is my God, would have stood out from the crowd and faced danger and persecution and death. Don't doubt that. There's no info surrounding his birth, unlike Moses, unlike Jesus, John the Baptist. A lot of the greater and lesser prophets don't seem to have birth-related accounts or stories. I can't even say accounts because they're myths created around their birth. You know, they're always myths. There's no specific training mentioned in his upbringing for prophethood. However, from his habits, it appears that Elijah was an outdoors type. He had strange dress and appearance. He was fleet of foot, had rugged constitution that resisted famine, and he dwelt in caves. This suited him for this role as a full-time prophet and servant of the Lord. He was able to move from place to place easily, and since he was a full-time prophet / servant of God, God used other means to take care of his needs in the story. He is one of the most important and respected prophets in Israel's history. God used him to bring about a revival in the northern kingdom. So yeah, the interpretation is that God accomplished miracles through Elijah. Though I wonder if anyone suspected that him being a prophet, he could also produce miracles. Similarly to how the apostles of Jesus could produce miracles as well. They were bestowed with the ability to produce miracles. He was going to come to earth before the Messiah. He appeared along with Moses in the New Testament transfiguration. That is correct. The transfiguration scene in the Bible is a very, very trippy moment in which his followers lose their minds at the fact that Jesus conjures up figures of Moses and Elijah right beside him, and in the air. And that was just to illustrate the fact that Jesus follows in the traditional prophetic footsteps. But the New Testament highlights Jesus above all other prophets, because Jesus in the New Testament is the Lord incarnate. Okay, hairy man, rugged outdoor type. Elijah had super speed. That is true. He would test the false prophet's ability by playing games with them. You know, challenging them to what we consider to be petty little feats, but nevertheless, there's a lot of that in his story. He ran 17 miles from Carmel to Jezreel faster than Ahab's chariot. That's impressive. The ancient flash. No, I'm kidding. He had fear. Right after God brought about a miracle and answered Elijah's prayer on Mount Carmel, Elijah grew afraid of Jezebel and ran away. This demonstrated a lack of faith in God and his protection. He was inconsistent, prone to ups and downs. He was very human. He considered highs and lows he experienced highs and lows, like I suppose many believers and Jews, Christians, Muslims experience highs and lows in their faith. It's a big part of their life, and you know, they don't always know how to handle it. He was prideful, Elijah. It was in his character to sort of boast of him and his friend, his Lord. He was a dedicated servant in a time when it was dangerous. All right, we've gone over that. He had lots of faith, even when it was, well, even after it was sort of broken. He still got it back, and his faith was restored. The New Testament even says that if we can have faith and we can move mountains, and Elijah is an example of someone who demonstrated the kind of faith. Okay, so this website is wanting us to reflect more about how we can be more like Elijah, or at least in the sense of having faith to God, which we're not going to get into in this video. He was obedient and had courage and was selfless. Yes, he was selfless, despite the fact that he was prideful and he was a bit of a show-off in certain cases. He brought a drought to Israel to challenge the prophets of Baal, and just to show everyone that, oh yeah, the Lord of Israel still applies to you all. So he did it in front of people and in front of Ahab. He hoped to encourage them to choose to serve God rather than Baal. God told Elijah even to confront Ahab, the king who hated him and wanted him killed, and Elijah did it. He was like, didn't expect me, did you? So, Elijah in the Bible, okay, final note. Elijah in the Bible is one of only 2 humans in the Old Testament, other than Jesus, that never clearly died in the way it's written. In 2 Kings chapter 2, God had a special plan for him and took him up directly to heaven in a whirlwind. Because in other scriptures, the fact that humans die, most believe Elijah either did or will come to earth again. Okay, there you go. In the Jewish tradition, it's believed that Elijah will come back. That's why they asked John the Baptist if he was Elijah, and he was back, because he didn't really die. There you have it. Elijah's an interesting character, I should say figure, prophet in the Old Testament. He did some really cool things. Can't lie about that. And the end of what they knew about his life was pretty epic. Can't argue with that. So, I'm Jack Existential. This is about the prophet Elijah, requested by a commenter. I thank you for the request. Please leave any suggestions below for another video. If you like these personality videos, comment another figure in the Bible or a religious figure that you'd like to have their personality analyzed. You get what I mean. See ya.